Hi.
Hi, Peter.
Are we the only two here?
Yes, it seems that yes. I
Did
was
you?
checking if
Uh-huh.
Roof posted event about our meeting, but
Yeah.
I couldn't see nothing.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah, I clicked the link from last week,
hmm,
and but you then you started this meeting since you were the first. There must apparently it auto starts. Yeah, I was trying to reach through Rob, asking him if this thing is even on this week, but he didn't answer.
maybe today we doesn't have meeting.
Could be. I know that I remember that they were saying something that Roof was going to be in Oregon this Thursday, but I was assuming that somebody would run it.
Okay, maybe they have this ski event. Puede ski.
No, I don't think that's this week. I think that's later sometime. Anyway, so where are you? Where are you based?
I'm from Spain.
Oh, Spain.
Yeah.
That's not a very Spanish name.
Okay, yeah. I totally agree with you. I was born in Ukraine,
Okay.
but I have 20, no, 18 years living in Spain.
That's a lot.
Hmm.
In fact, you have a bit of a Spanish accent to my ear.
Okay. Hmm. Thank you.
Well, here's somebody else. Hi, Michael. But it's beginning to look like there isn't one this week after all.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hi guys.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hi Nick.
Hi, hi. I think
Hello.
there's no, I think there's no spiritus movens in this meeting today.
Yeah, I saw someone said maybe it's gonna happen in Discord as a fallback.
Yeah, we sorted it out last week so that if Reuven can't make it, we can all still get in.
Are you going to be running the show then, Nick?
Yeah, I think we should just sort of open it up to whoever wants to show stuff that they were working on. Sort of round table it. I don't know
Oh, that'd be awesome.
what you have, Brad. I'm sure there's something with your symbolic language that if it's around. Bence, I'm sure you're working on something, and Michael.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know, Bence, I know you got lots of stuff going.
The problem is that I need to go in 15 minutes. There's a call I have booked in.
All right. Um, Anything up that you have right now? If you want to, you can kick it off if you want.
Yeah, I'm not prepared really.
No, yeah, no doubt, no doubt, Vince. Uh, anyone want to share anything that they're working on? I got a couple of things that I'm working on right now. Sort of half baked, but
I can just share that I realized this week I've been trying to use Cloudflow and really enjoyed the um, orchestration of agents, but with the learning part, it felt like lacking. That
right.
I wish it was doing the learning I was hoping for. Then I realized there might be an issue there, so I sent Cloud Code to check it out, and Cloud did find uh different things that it can hook. Like he said, like the packages are there, but some pieces, some hooks, I think it's constantly learning but never reading its learning or something like that. So I'm working on some branch to figure out if there's a way, a quick fix, um to just get all the parts connected so the learning can be part of the Cloud Code lifecycle.
Offer, I had that exact same experience. Claude was reporting that there are modules that are well written and functional, but they're not wired in at all. And so
Yeah.
it's probably the same thing because it was also a question of some learning function. I mean, I've been sitting at these things so much that I get into a bit of a haze as to what was with what, but the scheme was exactly the same.
Yeah, which lead me to a project I've been thinking about a lot and now working on, which is keeping things aligned. I'm noticing how we have the code, we have ADR, and we might have other documentation or meetings happening. And the project I'm working on would align all three and making sure because I can totally see how I'm asking Claude Code, can you fix this? It goes and fix it, break another thing. The idea of this project would be confirm with the ADR that all the changes are still aligned. When there is a discrepancy, it would ask a human with maybe suggestion recommendation, which part is right? Did we forget to update the ADR because the code actually is the new thing? Or the ADR is correct and the code need to not break what it was breaking before? And a similar thing in the part of documentation and meeting transcripts. Like maybe someone in a meeting decided, we should have in the homepage this new part. But according to ADR, we decided to use a certain funnel. So it would kind of create a soft warning to like, tell them in a meeting that there was a reason why and kind of allowing you to decide what's the right path as opposed to the experience most of us have today. I think is like we're being surprised by Cloud Code chunking so much lines of codes and like, oh, I did not expect that stop working, not working the same. And that's what my project is trying to solve.
I like
Well,
that alignment piece is really crucial, and I think it doesn't get enough attention, right? Like everyone's like, "Oh, I look, my agents have the skills, and I've got this new agents, and I've got this," but the alignment among different facets of the process is hugely important, right? And that's where the disconnect is happening. Is like it's not drift, it's like complete incoherence, right? From one aspect of the development process to
Yeah.
another.
And
And
how soon
yeah,
we're going to find out about it, right? Because there is a drift there, and then it's going to get bigger. In another project I had that end up having constant issues, and I didn't understand why I'm having constant issues. Some part of the document was updated to use the right database. Some parts of the code was still using a different one. And every time Claude was trying to solve it and fix it, depends on where it was looking at, it got mixed messages. So it took a while to even understand that there are mixed messages within the project, which is constantly generating bugs.
I'm sure we've all had these experiences because it's just, so far it has been impossible not to have them. But my sort of half joking advice would be that you work on this project really fast because the way these models are improving, pretty soon, I'm pretty soon it will be completely unnecessary. And when I'm working now with these 4.6 models, first with Opus, and then yeah, I don't know when did this sonnet come out? Yesterday or 2 days ago? But it's getting to the point where it's the model that's correcting my mistakes and not the other way around. I mean, I'm really getting that feeling that it's getting it's. It has its mind around what we, meaning it and me, are doing better than I do. So this whole alignment thing, it's going to be aligning us pretty, any day now.
That's
Yeah,
I've been
so
trying to
I would love the help and support of this group. I'm thinking of creating an open source project of helping all of us, right? Doesn't really matter if it's cloud code, but the idea that it would care as much as a human should, of like making things align and keeping them. And I think it would allow us to trust more what cloud code can produce by knowing there's a system there that takes care of it and keep it aligned and letting us know when discrepancies are happening.
Can
when
you
you
guys hear me?
were yeah.
I've been working on something and it's kind of a hot mess right now, but to try and for myself solve that problem of traceability because I've got ADRs out of sync with issues, out of sync with BDD feature files, and I'm trying to kind of wire them all up. It's
Michael,
this is
just so you
not
know, I'm receiving a very low resolution of the screen you're
okay.
sharing. I think
Yeah,
nothing
it's
is needed.
Nick, can you set it is sharing's not turned on. I don't know if somebody can do that.
Yeah, I'm not logged
Or
in as
maybe
an
you can
agent.
make the text really, really, really big.
Oh, I can make it really, really big, sure. Yeah, um it's not great. But essentially what I'm trying to do, I just wanted to point out that like this is everybody's got this problem right now where things are drifting. And so I've got this in one case it's a table that's trying to map all of these things. And it's very ugly. And I think well, I've got a few thoughts, but um I'm also trying to use graph to sort of like do a force directed view of where the you know um like for instance here this is so that we've got like a requirement, we've got its associated epic, we've got the stories. In other words, I'm trying to build traceability in here, and again it's very ugly. Usually it will look much nicer than this, but I'm also trying to move the project forward at the same time. So this is more utilitarian than sort of aesthetic at this point. But the thing that I'm building is sort of getting out of sync with like I've got an existing platform. I needed to retroactively, because I've adopted the platform from somebody else. I inherited this code base. So I'm retroactively doing discovery on that to build BDD feature files so that I have documentation for what the code is and how it's actually supposed to work. So I'm trying to trace those, but then I also have new features that I need to build. And then I've got the ADR component, which is something that Cloudflow is introducing. Although I'm finding that the ADR, I think there's different definitions of that. It's more, I think in this context, it's architectural direction record. Whereas historically, I think an ADR was a decision record where you're saying like, this is the technology that we're going to use. And it's not necessarily kind of uh, it's not necessarily on the feature side, it's more on the architecture technology selection side. So I think that sometimes the models get a little confused about that part. So which is why I've sort of tried to use more of the Gherkin files, the BDD, to say this is what the feature is supposed to be. These are the scenarios that are supposed to be supported. But at the same time, I don't want to kind of short circuit Cloudflow and lose out on some of the capability that it has. So I ended up with something that's sort of like this, that kind of connects the ADRs, the GitHub issues, and then just general kind of requirements in the form of the feature files.
What
So
language,
and I'll
language are you using?
sorry.
What programming language are you using?
Well, the system that I'm working with is just JavaScript.
Okay.
And
Okay.
this here, so I've got a JavaScript backend server, but I'm also running it on Firebase. But I'm migrating something from an AWS system. There's a Postgre database. But what you're seeing here is basically just JavaScript and GitHub,
Yeah.
and a repo of Gherkin files, GitHub issues, Cloudflow ADRs, and that sort of thing.
The reason I asked is some of the compiled languages have a higher abstract tree. So sometimes it's exactly what you were explaining. That's why I wanted to establish that first before going forward. So sometimes, because interpreted languages have a more, they have more runtime load, or I think that's kind of where it is. So there's not much that it can traverse through. So the what I think you can do with your Gherkin is you have to now group up the the parts, so the user journeys, right? So you have to group up the user journeys just like you would do a smoke test. So when you group them up, so normally a smoke test will be, okay, what are the mission critical parts, right? You would group them up like that and then flow with that. I don't think your ADRs are your issues because, like you said, it's more functional based. What you're trying to gain is the assurance of behavior. So you should focus more on how interconnected these parts are. So you would think in terms of the cyclomatic parts. You would think in terms of understanding how these things kind of send messages to each other. And then once that is established, you can then, your prompts should then be laced around how these journeys happen. And that is how you can gain assurance in a very incremental way. And then that's how you can then start bringing in things like test coverage tools and things like that. So that way, when you generate your test coverage tools, you can see how well the depth as you incrementally move along. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. There's one of the things I've been doing is also documentation of the different, and I think this maybe goes to what you're talking about. I'm trying to find it.
Should be able to
But I
share now there,
basically,
Michael.
I have
okay.
This is actually an area that I've put in interest, and it's actually the core thing I have in. I have a skill called Forge, and so the one of the things I'm tackling right now is exactly what you're tackling, the drift. So I'm actually looking at how to kind of use prime radiant, also personas and things like that. But anyways, it's on Forge. You can read some of the GitHub issues, and trying my best to kind of find an automated way to kind of solve this problem you're facing right now.
Yeah, I think this is a next area that we can all collaborate on refining. Trying to find one of the other things that I do, or that I've just had some success with today, is asking Claude to create a markdown file that goes through all user for every persona, user class, go through all of the the end-to-end flows and generate mermaid diagrams that are mermaid sequence diagrams. So it basically shows, okay, we've got this feature which maps to this, let's say, scenario in GitHub, or I'm sorry, in Gherkin, right? So you've got your Gherkin's feature scenario. You should be able to have a corresponding mermaid sequence diagram that's showing you how the data, how that flow maps to code within the system and the different layers of the technology. I was trying to find an example of that file, but
Michael, you should be able to
moment.
share your screen now in a
Okay.
normal
Yeah,
situation.
if I can find the file to share, I will. I mean, unless you're interested in that sort of ugly mapping tool that I've got. Just want to find. Yeah, I'll keep looking for it if somebody else wants to demonstrate something.
Michael, one of the things I found successful is if you so if you maybe you want to start by identifying those personas, and then uh, letting them know that the only cognitive thinking workflow that they should use is the Isaac Asimov's prime radiant. Wow, it will unearth a lot of things. It's more like from a perspective of learning about that code base, based on you being very distant to that code base, and then just tell it to just give you a report based on that, and that might actually unearth certain things there that could be potentially brittle. You would see a lot of it would help you unearth a lot of like the actual parts. It may not generate it will not generate, like the few ones I've done so far, like they may not actually generate for you like a report per se, like a diagram style that you want to see, which is very useful. But at least you get a document that you can just kind of get a more high level of how things kind of relate, and then you can then start from there and then group. I think you should just take them in groups, in the user journey groups, and just keep iterating, and you get almost 100% coverage.
Okay, that's good advice. I'll check that out. Still not able to find that file, but and there was another sort of quasi demo that I could probably give. That's something I've been working on. I just need to spin up that server, but really, you guys don't want to just hear me talk. Someone else has something very interesting that they've been working on that they're just dying to tell us about.
I'll share something,
said,
but
"Oh, great."
I just it's like installing and stuff like that. So,
Okay.
Mark, are you there? Okay, he's probably busy right now. I'm not sure how many spots are left for the Vermont retreat, but I just wanted to mention it again. Um, I think there's still a few spots left, but it's going to be a great weekend. It's in about a month or so. I can share the link in the chat for that, whoever's interested.
Yeah, Nick, hey, I am here. So there definitely are spots left.
Okay, great.
Oh, I forgot I had that.
If we are waiting, can I just ask the group? Like most corporates are still in the Microsoft universe, right? Generally, in my experience, I would love to understand how other people's experiences are. I'm talking more like small, medium, and also large organizations to an extent. How much of like we saw in one of the sessions with our Finland troop, basically in terms of how agentic practices have been applied on top of the wider Business Central, ERP, Dynamics, CRM, and other stuff. And I've been doing some research today, this week, basically about some of the work Microsoft is doing to bring in Fabric and from an analytics engine point of view, and the wider integration of the ERP, the CRM within the 365 universe. What are people's views here about how you would see the ecosystem pan out? I guess it's quite an open question. I've done something I can show you. Like I was trying to understand the documentation. I use Claude to understand. I can show you what I have come up with. Is basic discovery work, but I'm very keen to hear others' experiences or opinions. No.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. I was just taking the opportunity since there was a lull here and we are waiting. We all talk about agentic adoption engineering, and I'm going to correlate that with what I have seen with corporates which are still in the Microsoft, very much in the Microsoft ecosystem, right? So M365, Business Central from an ERP point of view, or Dynamics from a CRM point of view, and they find it very kind of difficult to move out or are unwilling to as well. At the same time, Microsoft has been working, I guess, hard behind the covers in terms of integrating their diverse systems with agentic practices, and I think Copilot is relatively doing a good job. I'm just probably quite an open question to see, like in your professional outreaches, have you come across or what have been your experiences and around companies with a Microsoft based setup and introducing them to agentic AI practices, ways of working, integration? It's quite a broad question, I guess.
One of the things that I've been doing with some of the SMEs, your small to medium-sized enterprises, is they getting them to learn new tools or even use like an MCP through a chat interface is somewhat challenging. However, email is a interface that going back to the 90s that people are comfortable with. And if you can couple your AI workflows with sort of augmenting things that are already in stream or in motion in email, you can participate in automating a lot of different processes. So different systems that the customers are interacting with will, send them email updates, which contains information that you can work with the language model to sort of interpret, determine if that information needs to be put into another system, determine if that is an event that should trigger some sort of a workflow, that sort of thing. And so I think that, to your point about, how are the kind of Microsoft suite centric companies adopting this stuff, I think that starting with the inbox I've had some success with that, where you can start to augment existing processes in a very kind of low touch, low learning curve way.
Nice one. Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Hey, Mandeep, everyone. One thing I try and focus on for when I'm working with companies, Copilot or otherwise, is really how do you actually interact with the AI first? So it's really foundational based, and then it just depends on the audience that you're talking to, how you adopt the core terms. So there's a big difference with AI being able to take the same amount of information, but now you're able to tailor it to a different audience. So the way that you explain that, it's really just the use cases that are different if you're talking to people in data, HR, or in coding. But it's the exact same foundational model, which is take what you have, translate it for an audience, kind of thing. So I just find keeping at that level does help. And then with Copilot, yeah, I'm just jumping into it. It seems pretty good. So I'd like to hear some tips about Copilot if anyone's using that.
Yeah, I mean, I echo you, Brad. I mean, actually, I was exploring this afternoon this question. So I just put some links on the chat. So there's a GitHub repo and there's a website I created. I mean, it's basically what I found is Copilot, as you say, it is quite going across. There are still some disconnects in the things like ERP systems like Business Central and Dynamics. But the point about is it Dataverse, which is supposed to be the unified data layer for Microsoft, they have done some good work actually by the looks of it. And from an operational point of view, it's a question of connecting. So there was some, like if you look at the GitHub, and maybe it's there in the website as well, some of the common problems like sales teams have, like, well, I can see my customer, but I can't see the finance details because it's in a system called Business Central and there's different systems. And the graph network in Microsoft, which I learned recently, so graph is what powers the whole of M365 ecosystem. That is quite a interesting RESTful API setup, and I think a lot of integration patterns are possible, and there are some examples in that GitHub repo. I think my hypothesis I'm framing here is that, like, beyond buy versus build, like Microsoft coming up with Fabric. Fabric is meant to be the lakehouse for Microsoft, right? The compute and storage together. But I think a lot of things are possible with agentic engineering practices to actually patch these things together. I think that is where I think there's an opportunity to make people aware of what build versus buy concept. Like a lot of things can be build, and I think that is where there's an opportunity. That is just a hypothesis, but I will welcome critique and review of the bit that I created this afternoon, which is summarized in a website. So leaving it there for you to look into.
That's awesome. I'm going to jump into your repo here right after. So thank you for providing this. But I know we talked about one concept with agentic engineering. It's not just for coding. It's about how do you evaluate really the workflows, and it's the same concepts that we're doing, which is, well, what is the purpose or North Star? Well, that applies to any team. It doesn't have to be code. And then how do you evaluate the major workflows, break them into tasks or beads or whatever concept that people use within the term, but it's the exact same process that you're going through. So, but I think having different approaches on what is the seed information that's available, if it's through Microsoft, if it's some other data link, or if it's just internal chicken scratchings for a small business, it's all the exact same Agentics process that you're applying. So I do fundamentally believe that we're just starting with the coding and some other use cases, but it's a fundamental change to the way that businesses will be operating. And now I'm diving into Nick and the MBA's world here, but that's just my philosophical approach to agentic engineering is actually the way that businesses will be run in the future.
So yes, basically my inspiration, some of it came from a session, and so we had a session at Greenwich University. So they called us to give a guest lecture, which was Ben's and I went into it. I don't know if Ben's is here, but they obviously allowed me Copilot. So I was just thinking, we were thinking, how do we teach them about engineering because they're not allowed to install anything else within Copilot. So my first approach was trying, can I hack into Copilot to use some kind of an OAuth to make it function like Cloud Code and other stuff? Well, I went down a rabbit hole there. But then that kind of took me to understand some of these other things. So yeah, one of the unsolved problem is that when people are constrained to using Copilot only, how do you introduce them to some of the bits that we are talking about? Something for us to explore if there are ways around it. Yeah, that's about it from me. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you could have an MCP with inside of, depending on what you want to interact with. But if you want to do things agentically, theoretically, you could set up some sort of an MCP that then allows you to sort of spread out into multiple agents and instances. Claude doesn't really like nested spawning. I'm finding it's like the permissions get sort of chopped off, but it's conceivable that you could have an MCP if you wanted to demonstrate some kind of agentic capability that you could plug into, one of these chat interfaces that would allow you to demonstrate that at least the techniques, if not the full power, given its restrictions. Brian?
Mandeep, I'll reach out to you separately about this, but I'm just getting into a project right now where company 14 years old, everything's Microsoft. If there's a software component, has a Microsoft license attached to it. So it's very fragile. Some of the components are already deprecated by Microsoft with new components, and it's created a 2-year backlog, tech debt. And this happens with, I think, a lot of enterprises with Microsoft when they're fully committed and they end up in the sort of Microsoft trap with all the licensing and dependencies. And one of the issues that I'm curious if you'll get into is provisioning API keys for any MCP or if you can get Claude Code or other tooling in, like where exactly is it calling? To then provision that key to a local cloud instance for the additional privacy and security required. There's like the constraints and requirements for doing anything around like agentic workflows drives tool selection of other Microsoft tools, so that it's very hard to then bring in the other tooling available that we're building, you're using when you have those like security constraints, licensing constraints, procurement constraints.
Okay, I'd love to talk more about this actually. Because this is one of the most common, I think, problem patterns we'll find. We all are talking at the cutting edge, but the reality is that, I guess I don't want to put a percentage to it, but a large number of companies are in the Microsoft world, and yeah. So how do
It's like the SOC 2 thing, which is like this compliance piece, and people don't know what it is. But then once they understand they're liable and they're at a large company, they have to have something that covers their ass. And so if it's a Microsoft product and it's compliant and procurement says you can buy from this vendor, then you get a yes. And so it drives all the decisions into compliance instead of performance, quality, flexibility, like all the other things that we're doing due to Agentics, right? Quality, speed, cost. You want to go after all three at the same time, you can today, but that's not the decision making inside of large Microsoft, software teams. And so that's particularly it's a pernicious issue. It's the walled garden. And it's worked for Microsoft, right? From the data lake to .NET to Razor forms, like everything. Yeah.
Like Azure OpenAI, I did some other search earlier on. So like because I couldn't hack into Copilot to use it like Cloudflow, Cloud Code basically. So it gave me some. I was chatting with Cloud Code, right, and it gave me some options about, well, you can use obviously Azure OpenAI, I mean, which is a general base that um, you can. It's obviously you need Azure for that, so it is not just through Copilot. I mean, there are too many restrictions. Like you can't use Copilot like Studio within GitHub Copilot. That's a different license. It's a minefield of licensing regime.
But I think to your point, and maybe Brad's point, if you can solve for a workflow that does drive more quality, speed, and decrease costs, like you figure it out, which is like the early stage hacking you're doing now, like what can I pull off under what compliance regime on Azure, then that suddenly becomes very valuable because every team wants to move, but they don't know how. And so then you need this like workflow that is compliant and gives you advantages.
Is there a specific workflow that you're thinking of? Because I think, I mean, there's such broad capabilities with the Microsoft stack that,
Yeah.
I could imagine a lot of tentacles, but if you describe like, okay, here's this high value, high frequency thing that happens at a company currently done
Yeah.
within a Microsoft ecosystem,
Yeah.
what is that? Because that might be more actionable.
Every opportunity I hear from the Agentics Foundation, like WebAssembly, MCPs, Rust, like all these performance game technologies may simply not be compliant as soon as you start working in a Microsoft enterprise codebase. And so that's like pernicious. Instead of thinking open source and assembling the best tools for the job, you have to get the tools that are approved for the job.
And the more important value loss really, and this is not agentic experience, this is all my previous experience of change and transformation, is everyone will come in like we got Microsoft's big new thing is Fabric, right? Fabric is basically analysis and analytics engine basically for pulling everything together, all the data, unified data lakehouse and everything. But organizations will implement them, right, at lots of cost. But many a times value realization, it really use case specific, as Michael was alluding to. So if we could come up with some kind of a solution pattern whereby you say, hey, here's your Microsoft stack because the capabilities are in there. This is how we can embed some agentic capabilities or workflows, as Ryan is saying. And therefore, it depends on your appetite, but you could go down full house on Fabric. But like if you look at the document that I had shared, the Netlify site, there are some problem statements there. So if you come down like a little bit further down, you say sound familiar, like I can't find the document I need, or marketing can't track annual revenue from campaigns, right? This is because things like campaign data in Dynamics 365 doesn't connect to paid invoices in Business Central. So it's like that whole connection bit. So if we can come up with workflow patterns which are like plug it
This
in.
is the new like integration service partner thinking agentically. Like the whole ISP ecosystem has to be rewritten. And so like if you have a version bump right now, that's a $250,000 job that's going to happen next quarter. And so then you could say, oh, I have full transparency of every compliant tool. I can configure it, at least with like the planning. So like you working with whatever tooling you choose can just strip mine compliant Microsoft tooling, figure out the path to version bump. That is value, like super high value in a lot of companies. And then Microsoft just launched 130 skills on their GitHub repo. And so that's really interesting. So for Copilot then to have agent skills for their code base, I think it's mostly Azure related skills today, but Microsoft's beginning to enable that, shipping the skill documentation, like shipping the dev doc, to then facilitate execution of those plans, which is like 2 years ago Agentics Foundation, but like they're working on it. So then it is faster for a Copilot agent to then execute a task on Azure or related.
Is the link I just shared, is that the link you're referring to? That's pretty valuable, actually. I hadn't come across this. That's the one, right?
Yeah, yeah. I just indexed it on Skillsmith when it came out, and so yeah, it's all there.
Okay, I'm gonna have a look at this.
It's good. Like they're it's not great, but it's good.
I'm going to ask Claude Code, what can I do because with my stuff? So let me see. Yeah.
There you go. Take an old code base, look at what's the refactor plan given the desired future stack on Microsoft compliant tools. Like here's this repo of GitHub skills or Microsoft skills, and then you have a agentic path, like a potential path, that then has to go through compliance with the company if they're willing to do that.
I like that, Ryan, because it's not what you can do, it's what you're allowed to do. And that's a missing component a lot of the time, right? Like this is really crucial. Like, okay, it may not be the latest greatest, but it's what they'll allow people to do, right? So let's focus on that. Unfortunately, yeah, you want to be frontier, but if you have a client in front of you and all the frontier stuff is not allowed, then it's not really very good to you, right? So, that's a great point that you're bringing up. Like it's got to be in the Microsoft box. And a lot of these big companies are in Microsoft, so it's going to be the same everywhere you go, right? So, yeah, this is a great thing you're working through. I got something to show if you guys want to see it. All right. It's I've been making a lot of changes to it, so it's misbehaving a little bit today. But yeah, I just opened up this skills repo here that was just shared. But the idea of this project is, there's these foundational repos that I've been sharing on my LinkedIn. So there's a number of them that serve a particular purpose. There's agents associated with them, but the agents are not really alive yet. They will be, but they're not right now. They exist, but they're not sort of wired in. So there's like these 25, 26 foundational repos. They're all open source and they all do something. Ryan likes the security one, wherever that one is. The security shield. Ryan likes shield. But so then there's an intelligence layer. So it sort of um, makes things a little bit smarter. And then there's a core layer. So this is kind of what Reuven's doing, right? He's like you see him come out with something and he makes it in like an hour, and it's like the most dynamic thing. But it's because he's got like thousands of these repos, these miniature repos that do different things, and then he just like cooks them up into these what I refer to as like cores. And you can see in brackets here, these are what make those smaller repos. This is what makes them up. Oh, I've lost sight of my cursor, unfortunately. Sometimes that happens when I share on Zoom. And then they all wrap up into this Agentics dev platform. So they're all the smaller ones are wired into the core, and then the core is wired into the Agentics.dev platform. And then there's an Agentics layer, right? So there's a number of different Agentics repos. So there's diligence. The idea behind this project is to support enterprise decision making, and then create sort of proposed scaffolding for these implementations. And I do that through the ERP surface. Again, a lot of this stuff I'm not quite it's not quite functional yet, but it's pretty close. Um, so you can kind of see it here where it is now. Like I just wired up all the downstream repos, but it's kind of misbehaving. And sometimes the Claude Code will try and take over and do everything, which is not what I'm trying to do. So you can see I've authenticated here with a key. So I've installed Claude Flow, or Claude Code, excuse me, and I've installed the Agentics CLI. And so I've ran a simulation here, and sorry, I've just there we go. I lost use of my cursor. Sometimes when I got too much stuff running it, I won't be able to see my cursor. But you can see this is what it came up with. This is a simulation to use Agentics and AI LLMs and so on in IBM's financial department. So you can see like the huge amount of employees, and this is largely done through RuVector. The idea is, and it's not quite doing it through the CLI yet, even, despite it being wired into the CLI. That's what I was working on yesterday, well, the last week or so. But what will happen is all those downstream repos will contribute to these simulations and artifacts in some way, uh, specific to the area that they're actually responsible for. So that it'll incorporate security, it'll incorporate, cost, it'll incorporate policy and all these different things that would go into these. So essentially, what I'm doing is I'm coming like straight at the I'm coming straight at the McKinseys of the world and the Deloittes and so on, and I'm coming and saying, "Hey, I'm going to do a better job than they're going to do." And I'm also going to actually create a scaffold for the actual solution that I'm proposing. I'm not just going to send you a slide deck. Um, so that's what I'm doing. Like I finally reached a inflection point where is actually like feels like progress, like you could be working on this stuff for weeks at a time, and it's like, man, it's like I'm not getting anywhere. But it's just this sort of downstream stuff that is a little bit more challenging to wire in. Um, so you can see this one is actually for IBM's marketing department. So you can see, okay, this one executed a little bit better because I actually said, like, don't rely on Claude Code to do everything, basically, I actually said use the downstream repos. Now, eventually I shouldn't have to actually say that. So I'll be able to get it working so it doesn't do it. But this is way better than the other one. And I haven't actually tested this. I'm just testing it right in front of you guys, for actually like whether it's able to actually use the downstream stuff. I know it's wired properly now. But you can see it used RuVector. It used, I don't, yeah, this is the synthesis. So basically, it's taking the, um, you know, uh, CLI commands and actually is recognizing them in natural language through the Claude Code interface. So that's what this synthesis thing is doing. And then it's actually showing, oh, it used the simulation runner. So that's one of the downstream repos. It used results index. It used the enterprise ROI engine, and it used diligence artifacts. This is great. So I didn't think it would necessarily do this on this call. So this is something I was actually probably going to look at after my work was done tonight to see how it was working. But you can see it's using the root vector service and ADR 004 as its authority. You can see the execution ID here. Um, so this is cool. So it's three phase. This is what I've been working on this for like 5 or 6 months, like every night till like 2, 3 in the morning. And this is what I've been waiting for, guys. So like I haven't actually seen this working this well. So I'm pretty excited right now, actually. So anyways, it's just it would never show the downstream repos being activated in any way, even though that's what the goal was. Um, So anyway, it's showing. Oh, I actually even use some of the agents. So these are some of the agents. I'm actually at the stage now of like wiring the agents in to make sure they're all being activated through the CLI interaction, the similar way that I was doing with the downstream repos previously. So that's I didn't expect it maybe to use any of the agents I created downstream. So it looks like it's got a few that it's called on. So it's got the financial model. Oh, cool. Okay, so here's where the artifacts are stored. So the idea now is like once I get all those agents actually wired up, I will then be like, okay, like in the ERP Surface, the Agentics ERP Surface repo, it's not integrated, it's not an integration into SAP and Oracle and all this because that's like really like heavy stuff, right? So it's basically just ex the most 10 to 12 used surfaces in those platforms that companies would integrate their solutions into, or the company itself would integrate a new solution into. I'm actually looking at those 10 or 12 surfaces, most commonly used surfaces, and then I'm saying, okay, if you were to actually implement this thing, this is what it would look like. And it's not a fully baked solution, but it is showing them enough to make a decision whether or not they should move forward with it. And you can see this is probably pretty familiar to you, sort of Reuven inspired UI in the CLI of or in the Claude Code. That's what I'm using as the UI. Yeah, Mondeep, whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
by
I
all
mean,
means.
I'm going to just put on a business hat on, and I'm going to ask a question to all of us so that we are able to, how do we position it? So let's take a CIO persona, right? So we're going on, and then we need to explain this to him, that person. What is it that we are going to say here? What I do understand here is that you are saying, right, McKinsey's, BCG's, you coming in, you talking with a problem about a transformation here. They're going to come up with a proposition, etc., and it's going to be multi-million dollar, etc., whatever, right? And we're going to say, here's an alternative. So let's take an object like I want to increase my growth, but I want to increase my revenues in my business in the next, like my OKR is that I want to increase my revenues by 10%, right? And I want to basically see the first results come in the first 6 months. Say that's my as one of my key results.
Yeah.
How am I going to position how are we going to position what you have produced?
For something like that, right? Well, we would just run that request in natural language essentially, right? And basically, it's not position. I know for sure based on like some really early discovery with enterprise key decision makers is like it's definitely not, hey, I have 50 repos and 100 agents and 80 integrations and integration repo. Like that's not what it is, right? It's just like this thing's going to help you to make decisions faster, both from like a business and a technical standpoint. That like it's going to help your engineering team to not drown themselves in prototyping. It's going to create a prototype that's going to be able to integrate into your ERP, but it's also going to be a direct reflection of that request or that exploration that key decision maker is um, is inquiring about. In this case, the 6 months growth OKR, and I like that OKR, uh, the thing you mentioned, right? Because it's like that would be a great way to sort of position it. Actually, like what are your OKRs? You know, and then basically running these simulations on them, running diligence on them. It will accommodate the complexity of their compliance and policy, requirements and things. But yeah, the selling side or interaction with the customer side is still a little bit raw. Um, but it's still sort of very much in the imagination, ideation type stage. But the way it'll be a lot tighter. That's where I'm a lot stronger actually than
Actually, I'm going to suggest like when you finish your work after this call, right? Ask Cloud Code to say, look at your entire code base and say, I need to position this against BCG, etc., to a CIO, to a CFO, etc.,
Yeah,
and
the
create
persona thing is going to be great. Yeah, definitely.
help
It's
to
going to
explain
because
this.
it's going to look a little different, right? Depending
Yeah.
on who I'm talking to and how they're going to what motivations they're going to have. But, without Reuven's uh, li laundry list of tools, there's no way I'm able to do this. Like it's
No, but
it's not possible.
we can test the market. Like what I was saying, Agentics Consulting, right? If we as a group have to form this to displace the big boys here, we can test the market with some kind of with the help of our marketing team to, let's do a based on the work which we are doing at the moment, let's test with some, I won't say campaign, but some kind of targeted outreach to say, this is the alternate possibility. Because I think you're touching on the discovery phase, because many of claims, like whether you say PwC, whether you take any of the other big ones, there is this discovery phase which is still quite significant, right? I think what you are saying is that the whole discovery process can really be an automated setup, right? You basically let the agents discover what's the next best alternative to your okay to satisfying OKRs, and it's going to give you the
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah, and as opposed to it just sort of being like this is what Claude Code said, there's actually stables that are really focused on particular areas, cost, security, policy, etc. Right? So it makes things a lot more valuable. They're a lot more coherent, or as opposed to Claude Code, because I've seen Claude Code do it on its own, like use RuVector and do a simulation, and it's not nearly the same. And at the end of the day, it's really going to create an artifact or scaffolding, well, both, like like a key decision maker, strategy person, whatever executive artifact, which they can actually look at. And then it's also going to create the engineering scaffolding that will go up to their ERP or like Oracle or SAP or whatever. So then engineering perspective will actually say, okay, it's kind of trying to like wrap the senior leaders together in a way that allows them to make decisions in days as opposed to months. That's basically it. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Great start. Yeah.
Yeah. If we start selling this, man, it's gonna be
We should.
we're gonna make some
Why
money.
would we not?
Something else to think about in terms of the sales cycle, I kind of wrote a LinkedIn post about this, but the one of the aspects of the kind of agentic speed is that your costs of proof of concept are, close to zero, right? So what I've been able to do is secure certain amounts of business by just building the thing and saying, look, here it is, it works, you know, and like if you can get enough of the inputs for a given enterprise to feed into your model to say like, look, I've done the analysis. I'm probably wrong in a few places because I've only been working with publicly available information about your organization. You could give me more information and we could fine tune this, but basically, this is what I'm promising. So it's not that you're sort of having to sell the possibility. You're showing them like this is what it does, and your costs. You don't have to sell an idea anymore. You can sell the actual solution.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, that's the end goal, right? Is to actually get something like at least an MVP for whatever it is that's being proposed. And then basically just tell them like, hey man, you can just put any idea that you want in here, things you want to explore, and it'll actually spit out at least when I'm saying scaffolding, really super minimal viable product of whatever that implementation looks like. And then if they want to actually pursue it, then they can take it into their engineering teams and build it out kind of thing, like fully the way they want. But that's kind of the idea is sort of it's pushing like a scaffold right now, but it's not going properly to the ERP surface. But that's kind of like the next couple of weeks I'll be working on that. But ideally it would create at least a basic, they would say, well, we're using SAP or we're using Oracle or we're using Workday or we're using whatever it is. and then it would accommodate that accordingly and actually write the program. And that's where I'm going to basically use Claude Flow in that phase of it to actually do it. And and in that output that you just saw, there is actually like a Spark specification that's being created currently. And then the next layer will be, okay, make ADRs based on that and DDDs based on that Spark specification, and then order them in some sort of way that makes sense. And this is how I'm doing my builds now. And it'll basically take like ADR 2, 8, and 12. They go together, coupled together, and they go as one prompt. And that keeps it a little bit more controlled. And I feel like I could probably get it to kick out at least an MVP of whatever that implementation looks like based on that structure, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Again, I think it'll happen next week, but it'll probably be it'll probably be 4 weeks or 6 weeks from now. But and that's basically it though. Like it's pretty ready to go. Like I'm pretty close to ready to go to market with it. A little bit of you know the actual front end product of it, you know, to charge people. It exists, but it's not coherent right now. I'm using an internal approved email list kind of thing to activate it. So I've got to sort through some of that.
How will you provide the assurance about the security of the different repositories and the components that is making up the agentic platform?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Mondeep. I mean, don't really have an answer for that one right now, but it's really got to be benchmarked properly, you know, at the very least. Um, right now, some of them are benchmarked, some of them aren't. But I'm glad you're asking these questions because these are the questions people are going to ask me, right? So, uh, that's a good point, Mondui, but definitely something that needs to be addressed.
But maybe if there is community members here who we can do a red team, blue team against your platform
Yeah.
being hosted, right? I mean, that could be a good
Yeah.
learning exercise for all of us.
Yeah. Poke some holes in it. And maybe that's where some of the security, hacking for good, like Reuven stuff around that, like maybe I'm glad you mentioned that. Maybe I run that against a number
Air
of
defense,
them.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Air defense kind of thing.
Yeah, I call it hacking for good, but yeah, that's right. The defense systems, maybe I can make use of that.
Should we'll wait for you to host it somewhere and open it up for all of us to attack it.
Hack away, yeah. Well, all the 25, 26 are open source, and a lot of the holes would be there more than likely, because I did actually become a better developer in this process. So the first few are not as good as you see them going along there. Yeah, that's what I've been up to. But I'm definitely going to open it up for people to test out at the very least, like people from the foundation, like definitely. Just some people are already actually on the approved internal list. They just don't know yet. But I'm definitely going to be looking for some support in that way. Does anyone else have anything they want to share before we head out? Matt, do you have anything? I don't know if Matt's there or not. Offer, you want to share anything before we go? Nothing?
Nothing ready to be shown yet.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Thoughts on what I was sharing, Offer? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it before we go, if you got a minute, because I know you
Yeah,
know what
no,
time it
I
is.
love
I'm just
yeah,
stumbling through here, you know?
I love the idea. I think there's so much, right? I've been in some meetings recently, and I mean, I think the group that meets here is like so advanced, and there's so much of people don't even know, right? Like what's coming and the potential of this and what it can open. is incredible. So I love this. I think there's so much more room for things like that, of solutions that are valid today. It's not like something that you need months and months to put together. That open up opportunities that were not there not so long ago. Now what's missing is getting to these audiences to tell them like it's here, right? Like you have a product that actually can be useful. And yes, it used to be you need to pay a lot more money to big firms to do similar, maybe not as good even as a research, definitely not in the time scale that you're showing. And I think it's part of this big change of that changes everything.
Yeah, and the best part is I can actually like safely give it to them without charging them initially to test it. Like I can actually do that. Like I can afford to actually do that, which is crazy, if you think about it.
Yeah,
But
it's a
yeah,
new right. It's a new thing that could be good marketing in the past, but would not be financially
yeah,
possible.
exactly, man. It would cost you $1 million to buy your customer, and if you're a big ass company, you can make it back. But for average Joe, there's no way you could do it.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm actually looking at maybe just piloting, 3, 4, 5 major enterprises that we all know, and then selling it pre-revenue in some way, as opposed to grabbing, like running it and managing it and all this stuff. Like, I don't know, man. I think I'm gonna end up selling it to some company that wishes they were McKinsey, but they're like, 1% the size or something.
yeah.
Something like
And there's so much room, right, for all these companies anyway. So, and maybe McKinsey are not going to go for it,
No, they
but
won't. They won't. But
competitors would.
yeah, yeah, the guys that are wanting to be them, sure.
Yeah,
And if you think about the environment they're in, quote unquote small company in that environment probably does like $100 million a year or something.
yeah.
You know?
And one more thing to add, I don't know if it's new for anybody here, but I notice it more and more of the unique tool sets we're using is different than what's known out there. Right? What's known out there is only limited to the big LLMs that everybody talk about. It's OpenAI, Claude. Like there's no other ways of looking at solving problems, at learning, at researching. And I think that's also very unique, reducing costs and speed.
Yeah. Yeah, this whole thing is in Rust and in TypeScript. So that's how I made it. But I'm sure it can produce whatever people want. You would just have to ask it. Um, but anyway, anything else before anyone wants
Yeah,
to? You guys?
a quick one. So Ryan, thank you for those links. I've actually embedded it into the website. Let me quickly show you how it looks like. Again, feedback welcome from anyone wishing to explore it and use it. Um, here we go. So in here, under the guide section,
I'm not seeing your screen there,
oh, you don't see
Mondweeb.
my screen. All right, nice one. What about now? You see it now. Okay, right, I can see it. So other guides, so Ryan, I have included that here under Microsoft Skills and Skillsmith. So I'm going to explore that. So that one talks about what it is. I think it talks a little bit about the setup and so on and so forth, and the bits, some practical examples as well. So might be worth trying out, and it's all there in the GitHub, which is linked somewhere here, which is actually here. So I think it's got updated here. So if anyone wants to try and build something using this one, I would welcome what you find out. I'm going to try myself, but that's the GitHub repo.
That's cool. You just made that site right now, right, Mondweeb?
Yeah.
I mean, this looks like you spent a year building this, man. But anyways, it looks really good.
Yeah. We'll see.
It has a Microsoft vibe, and I say it in a good way, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
guessing for the audience that want to see it, it looks like it hits it right where it should.
Wow, that's hilarious. You like heard about it like 20 minutes ago, and you already have it. This is awesome.
Nice one. All right. Now I don't know how to stop. Oh, there you go. Stop share button.
Magic. That was some magic you just showed us, Mondweep. You learned about the repo 20 minutes ago, and this is people can go to the GitHub and check it out, and you got a site up for it. It looks great. I gotta close the room now. Antonetta, you have anything before we go? Matt, nothing. Okay. Well, I enjoyed this session. It was a little less, you know, crazy Reuven mad scientist, but we'll have to wait one more week before we see that.
All right. Thank you, Nick.
Okay, guys, we'll talk to you again.
Thank you.